See, I have to listen to that to calm me. Can't do the news all the time. Yes. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. It's an honor every day. Every day. We've got a lot to talk about today. A very interesting story. But before I get there, I want you all to continue to reach out to me. Please, hey, Bernadette, girl, you know you're always first. Like and share. Bernadette Telfair. All right, girl. And all of my morning stars, please go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, like and subscribe, and please share the show. Please share the show, but I need you to like this show. You help us with the algorithm. Hey, you doing easy peasy, Paula? How you doing? How you doing? One of the original morning stars. Sending you so much love. Hey, I am at the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there. And I'm on Blue Sky at Santita, no, Santita, yeah, at santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social, and I am on X at Santita J, at Santita J. There's also the Santita Jackson Show. You can reach me there too. And finally, Facebook. Everybody, please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. That is where I can receive new friends. Facebook has something called the landing page, and that's the first page that you open, right? And I exceeded the limit. And what they do when you exceed the limit, they start kicking off people. I don't have any control over that. So if you would, please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. I had to establish what they call a fan page so that I can get all of you, because I want us to create a wonderful community here. Okay, so do that favor for me, everybody. Please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends page so that I can confirm you there. We're going to be talking about the executive order that President Trump has established that will allow police officers who are already unleashed to go wild. That's in the next hour, and we will be talking with Fred Hampton's lawyer, Attorney G. Flint Taylor. That's right, about this. It's something that he's very disturbed about, and he wants to talk about that. But right now, I got my girls with me today, talking about a story that, quite frankly, that's very, very painful. I just left Rochester, Minnesota, the site of the Mayo Clinic. Beautiful, beautiful community. And I've met some really beautiful people there. But, one bad apple does not spoil the bunch. So I'm loving the people of Rochester. That having been said, I also know that we've got ugliness everywhere. It's in our DNA. And if we can address it, what do they say? You can't, I think James Baldwin said, you basically, if you can't run away from your problems, you got to face them.
That's right.
He put it so eloquently, and I'm going to find that quote. But you must face your problems. And what's interesting is that we've got very young people who are full of hate and contempt for people. And so this is the story. There's a video that was shot in Rochester. There was a white mom who called a 5-year-old Black child who's on the autistic spectrum the N-word. And a Somali American man took the video. He couldn't believe it. And as he interacted with her, she said, yeah. And basically, I'd do it again because this 5-year-old child was trying to steal from my toddler. So what do you think about that? And then she went online, and her name is Shiloh Hendricks. At least that is the name that she has given everyone, because she is in fear for her life. That's right. Her fundraiser on Give, Send, Go is entitled Help Me Protect My Family. She identified herself, according to this Washington Post report, as a mother who appeared to use the slur in the video. She didn't respond to any requests at least from the Washington Post, but she has launched this fundraising campaign for herself. What do you make of it? And she said she needs protection. People have sought out where she goes to the gym. She said she is, now afraid for her safety. Now, this is someone who called a 5 year old boy the N word. And I have to tell you, I had an experience similar to that with my baby brother. He was 11 months old. And years ago, 40 plus years ago, they used to, and this was almost 50 years ago, they had in the dressing rooms, um, they were not dressing rooms properly. They were really, they had dividers, right? You remember that? And so there was space in between the dressing rooms, and in many dressing rooms, that's still the case today. And so my mother, our babysitter, and my baby brother and I were in the dressing room while my mother was trying on some gowns. She had an event to attend that evening. And my brother, as little 11-month-old boys are wont to do, started crawling on the floor. And he started grabbing the ankles of some of the young ladies who were next door. And the woman, the teenager, because she did have a younger voice, kicked at my brother and said, "Get away from me, you little N word." And I must say, my mother blew a gasket. And so I can only imagine, because when she kicked at him, she could have hurt him. And they did kick at him. They didn't. And their mother was in there with them. And when my mother snatched back the curtain, yes, she did, the mother snatched the curtain back. Who the blank do you think you are? Then our babysitter, who was one of these basketball players, like, oh yeah, and Cynthia did not play. She said, "We were talking to you. You come on out here right now," with her pick in her head. And he said, "Oh no, we are about to have a problem in here." So I can only imagine, this is your child who's being called the N word by people who are old enough to know better. And this woman is portraying herself to the public as what she is, a mother, someone who's raising a family. Who are you raising? What are you doing? And then you find out this boy is on the spectrum and you have no apology. As a matter of fact, she thinks she's right now. So, Attorney Anastasia Sanat, I've got to ask you, what do you think? Ariel Gold, Fellowship of Reconciliation, I've got to ask you what you think. Lavonia Perryman, journalist. And all of you are activists in your own spaces. What do you make of this?
Well, I can tell you right now that I am disgusted by the fact America has become so blatantly racist. Um, it's actually better in order for us to combat it, but unfortunately, it's traumatic because a lot of us have not taught our kids this type of hate. So when you're experiencing adults that teach children how to hate and express the hate towards 5-year-olds, it's kind of jarring and it's kind of hard to explain it to just what we call, a regularly developmenting child. Now you're talking about a child who's autistic.
Mhm.
How do you explain that to someone who's, got special educational needs to begin with? So I think the controversy here, however, is not the fact that she's blatantly racist, because we know it exists. We know that they exist. I think the controversy here, at issue here, is the fact that she decided to start her own, basically a GoFundMe page, right? And then that was removed. But then the Give, Send, Go page, the Christian based page, and all these extremists wanted to donate to her and support her, quote unquote, for whatever reason. But in the process of donating and supporting her, we're using words like Nate and then Higgers and things like that in order to articulate how they have a deep seated or deep rooted hate for, Black people. I mean, what do you do with this segment of the population that has been born and bred to hate and has no clue how life would have been had it not been for the contributions of the Black community to this American community. So it's kind of disgusting that there's so many people out there willing to publicly state with their own money, right? Like Paul Miller, that I'm willing to hate and support your hate too. That's what's really at issue.
Well, but the thing is, these are not radicals. And that's what is unsettling, Anastasia. These are people who are walking down the street with you every day. They're in the restaurant with you.
Hmm.
I mean, this is as American as apple pie. Was that A. Trap Brown who
Hmm.
said that 60 years ago?
I
Oh,
don't know.
no,
I
no.
wasn't here.
Oh, no. Well, I missed what he said, but I've read about it because I was a little girl. I wouldn't have. It was in about 69 or 70 or so. He said
Look,
racist.
Ariel and I said we weren't here, Santita.
Oh, honey, I was. And at 5 and 6, my parents were preparing me
Hmm.
for that. See, that's part of the problem
Hmm.
that you have today is that many of you have not been forewarned, therefore you're not forearmed and you can't take it. And as my grandma Helen said, if you can't take it, you can't make it. You got to be prepared to hear the N word and
Yeah,
deal
I
with
mean,
it. And more than
Generation
that,
X has gone through a number of different things, but
no,
this
no, no,
level of hate
no,
is
no,
not something that I remember experiencing as a
no.
child.
But Jewish kids are told, Ariel, anti-Semitism exists and you must be vigilant. And those of us who survive, Anastasi, and thrive are vigilant, and we are, as the French say, on guard. We are on guard because you must be. When I read the story, while I was saddened by it, I was not shocked, Ariel. Sadly, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. And these are not extremists. These are Americans, honey. Everyday people who are right here with us. Ariel?
Yeah, of course, I'm not shocked either. It's like we've turned back the clock many decades. I grew up in northern Florida in elementary school and middle school, and it was just normal and accepted there. And kids wore Confederate flags,
Mm-hmm.
to school and use whatever words they felt like. And I say kids because really some of them were innocent kids. Elementary school children bring into school what they've been taught at home, and I remember being shocked by it then when we moved to Florida because I had come from the north, so I just wasn't so used to it. But I really thought that in the past decades we had come a long ways. But it's coming all the way from the top now. It is fully acceptable to use that kind of language to throw hate at all kinds of groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters, certainly anti-Semitism, the real kind, not the criticizing Israel kind, is run rampant right now. And it's all the way from the top. And so it's like turned on its head who's the victim and who's the perpetrator. And I feel bad again for the kids of these kinds of people, right? Because this is what they're being taught. They are being taught to hate. And
Now, Ariel, wait a minute.
coming.
She's saying her page helped me save my family.
Mm, mm.
Are you serious, Ariel? I'm going to pass this question around to everybody. Let me start with you. Where does that come from? Because every time this happens, you see white people turn this around on black people. And I'm like, wait a minute. Number one, I'm outnumbered by you in this country. In this country, not in the world, but certainly here. And I've not lynched you. There's no lynching museum that commemorates your lynchings. If you average it out, when they opened the lynching museum in 2018, they had more than 5,000 representations of lynchings. I said, okay, that means just technically say we've been here 400 years. That's 4,800 months. There are 5,000 representations of lynchings, and they're ongoing. So that means we've had like one point, not even like little more than one lynching every month that we have been on this soil. That's the average.
You know, we're not just seeing it here, right? This is the whole like reverse affirmative action thing, the whole reverse racism. White people are being discriminated against, white men, let's say. White Christian men are being discriminated against in employment and entry to universities. So, you know, this is that larger picture. And so that's exactly what this woman is crying, right? That she's being discriminated against. But
and she's under siege from a 5-year-old boy.
And this isn't new either. The whole like, the Black people are gonna come get me and I'm unsafe. That's old racism. And we're just,
if Black people were gonna go get that girl, she'd have been gotten by now.
but you know, but look, think about Emmett Till, a 14-year-old boy. And you know, and what I was thinking about this as we were coming up, and I thought about Emmett Till, I thought about Carolyn Bryant Dunham, who more than 50 years later said, well, it wasn't quite that way. And then you find out that the courthouse held the arrest warrant. That's still in Mississippi, in the basement. UNC Chapel Hill, one of the most esteemed universities on earth, is holding her confession in their archives. And she, you know, only God knows it. You know, and I've said this before, and I think it bears saying, Livonia, they accused Emmett Till of a sex crime. So when they heard him screaming in that barn all night long, you know they had defiled him. You know they were raping him. You know that's what they were doing to him. And I say that, everybody, because I want you to be horrified by it. Because we saw the picture of his head that had been beaten in. But you didn't know. I said, did they do it? Did they do an autopsy? Was he intact? Let me put it as gracefully as I can. Was he intact? I doubt it. See, because this is where this goes.
Absolutely, right. This is where it goes, and everyone has said exactly what is happening, what has been said. What is really frightening is that the people now at a young age, remember this woman had to be in her 20s with a baby, right? Yeah. With a baby on her hip. So what does that mean? Not only is the African-American little boy being impacted by this conversation she had or this derogatory outburst, her child also is being impacted by her actions. So we ask the question, no one comes into the world racist, but look at what is happening, how it unfolds, how it infects a community, one person, two people. Now she is infected thousands. And how do we know? Because she's making, at least at this point, based on reports, around $700,000. But not only that.
Now, wait a minute. Opposed to what he's raised, up to a little more than $300,000.
Yes. And then that not only is this a woman in her 20s with a baby on her hip who is white, and a little Black boy who is innocent. Let's say that. I want the word to be innocent, not really knowing, even if he touched the diaper bag, that's what she said. Even if he did, he doesn't know. Now he's seen a diaper bag, looks like his. Hey, I'm going to find out if there's a whistle in there or whatever. My point is also, just think about it, guys. The church, Christianity, they use the Bible to defend actions such as this. That is what's happening in America today.
I wonder what they're going to do when the Pope is Black.
Nothing.
You know?
That won't make any difference. Because the Pope is also, we have to remember, I'm not Catholic, so I don't have that kind of investment in the Pope. I do respect him as a powerful figure who is a head of state. See what
And I'm
we,
transparent. I am Catholic. Right.
you know,
Catholic too.
and my mother was raised Catholic, and
Okay.
much of my family is Catholic. I
Yes.
respect it. I just, but I also understand, like I understand the politics of all of these religions. That's why our founding fathers said, hey, separate church and state, because the counterweight to government is church. Nothing more powerful in the world than the church. Though Rome is not the home of the Vatican, the city of the Vatican City is the home of the Vatican. It is a country that is inside of Rome. They dispense passports. Part of the reason you cannot approach these churches when they have all kinds of scandals is because they are a state.
Yes.
Technically, they have diplomatic immunity, right? So, they can paint this any way they want to. But having a black pope or an Asian pope is a political move because the world is colored.
Yes.
And they cannot go any further in these because they have added cardinals to the College of Cardinals to be more reflective of the people they're serving. It's not a good look for America to only have white people representing them.
Well, there's 93% of the world is of color. Only
Absolutely.
7% of the world is white. So
That's right. And white people get it. That's why one of the Caribbean leaders who was assassinated said 50 years ago, just about, that the royal family of Britain would have a black member.
That's right.
Because more than 94% of the Commonwealth is of color. They're black people and Indians, East Indians. So that's the politics of that. So because if they have a black pope, that's wonderful, but that's not going to do anything.
Right, but in this particular situation, and it crosses all borders. Remember, even the people at the White House used the Bible upside down, of course, used the Bible to justify racism, sexism, homophobic. All of this is, and it's happening as we speak with this young lady. There's the church or a church or a community of Christians funding and supporting her. You're absolutely correct. So what I'm saying is that it's not just the little wonderful little boy on this side. There's another little boy on this side. And most of our families, even my family, are mixed, diverse. All of us, every family, my family, your family. And so we have to look at the world in a bigger picture. It's not just the little black boy. It's little black boy's mom, dad, cousin, aunts, uncles, and it's the woman, her name allegedly, Shiloh Hendricks, her mom, dad, sister's brother. But guess what? It's her baby boy that was on her hip will be determine what the world will look like, because we have two equal, the black boy and a white boy. And how will they receive what the mother did and said? That's where we have to separate and figure out how we give a message that will uplift both the little black boy and the white boy.
Because that child,
yes,
his name, that is the name that she gave us. Her child needs saving. See, I would not hold this child. I don't want to, I'm not going to hate anybody because that makes me sick. The child is defiled, and the child who's on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
I don't think he doesn't even know what happened.
No.
I'm sure what he caught was the hatred. And I think that was what probably threw him.
It frightened him.
That was the trauma. But I have Chaparral Wells here, and Chaparral's a faithful listener to the show, and and she helps me a whole lot. She's been one of my earliest listeners. When I was on another station, she used to call and read me the Riot Act, Ariel Gold. And then she came to confront me at an event, and I love her to pieces. that's how I met her. But she isn't, and she's also a fabulous chef. Maybe she can make something for us when you all come in for the Push Convention, which is June 12th, 13th, and 14th, everybody, in Chicago. So you got to come And you'll see Ariel there. You'll see Attorney Sanat. You'll see Lavonia. You'll see Chaparral. And maybe if we're nice, Chaparral will make us some banana pudding.
Ooh, wouldn't that
That
be
would be nice.
wonderful? And I love banana pudding.
Sounds
Mm.
good.
Yeah.
She has to make it for my dad first. Every time he sees her, he says, pudding, pudding. Where's my pudding? Where's my pudding?
Mm.
But what do you make of this? Because she's also an all jokes
I was
aside,
listening.
she's also an award-winning podcaster. Her I Am Somebody Somebody podcast on the Intercept had more than 2 million views, listens and ears, and it's because her son was killed. The police did not help him. And we still don't know what happened all these years later. But she has continued to push. They have a scholarship fund in her son's name. And she has continued to push and work in her community. And she wanted to weigh in on this topic today. So, and she's a mom and, excuse me, a grandmother.
Yes, and I'm raising two black grandsons. You know, I'm helping my daughter all the time, Santita. Plus, I have three foster kids that are also boys, and it is difficult in America for black men, black boys, because we are immediately, you know, they're under attack. And so when you told me about this story, I was just like appalled to hear this woman talk to this child this way. But then she pulls out her white tears card, and she begins to play the victim. See, I know Jesus is working with me, Santita,
Thank
because
you.
I could not be that black mama. Because just like she said that, baby, 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 I, 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 I wouldn't no longer be Christian if my child had to go through that in front of me. No, no, no. The thing
Yeah.
is that we are we are, as black people, are told to try to do the right thing all the time, because if the mother would have retaliated against the white woman, it would have been worse for her. And I'm tired of it, Santita. Some of these white folks need their butt whooped. Just like I sent you a video of this black man who was accosted by this white man, and he pulled out the belt and beat the stew out of him. And some of this white woman right now, when she said those words to that child, she needed the stew beat out of her. I
Well,
don't condone violence. I don't believe in violence, but sometimes some people just deserve to get it. And I'm okay with saying that she one of them people that deserve to get it. And when we think about, Santita, how our black men and our black boys are treated, they're not given the benefit of the doubt. When we think about Tamir Rice, who literally was playing with a toy gun, and got his head blown off, and got killed in 2 seconds. And we think about George Zimmerman with Trayvon Martin. Had a pack of Skittles and a juice, and he is lying in the grave. And when I think about my own child, who sat there in front of at least 20 cops begging them to take him to the hospital, and they refused. And so we
and
see
wait a
how
minute,
they
and delivered him
value.
to the hospital in handcuffs.
Yes, yes, they treated him as a suspect as opposed to treating him as a victim. And I tell this story because this is something that I live. They do not value black lives. They do not. That's when they say Black Lives Matter. People say, "Oh, this is just, it was the worst thing. It was, we shouldn't be on that band." No, we should be on that bandwagon, because our lives do matter. And so when we have to make them see what we see, you know, people are sitting around here like, "Oh, you know, this is going on with Trump, this and that." No, 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 no. This has been going on before Trump, for the 400 and some odd years that we've been on this America. since we've been on this side of North America, we have been going through it as Black people. And because they don't think that our lives have value, but it does, our lives do. And so
You know,
until we begin,
it's interesting you said that. They put that on there. One of the
yeah,
people put on the posts of the donation, all white lives matter.
Yeah.
They know that we matter. They just want you to know that their lives matter more. I mean, look what happened to Shiloh Sanders and Shador Sanders. And look at how they treated Jimi Hendrix when he was in the business. I always think of Shiloh and Sanders and Jimi Hendrix and not Shiloh Hendrix. I be thinking of the Black people. I don't think about her.
Well, you know what? I have to say this because I come from the nonviolent tradition. I do. I do know that you can be pushed past your limit. But one thing we have to do is be very, very careful not to, and you're not always going to be successful, but you have to try because you're dealing with people who are spiritually sick.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to show them it is, for those of us who are spiritually mature enough, we have to let them know, wait a minute, this is the way you do this. This is not the way you do this. Now, I'm not saying you, as Chris Rock said, he said, I will never, ever, ever justify putting hands on a woman. But sometimes you got to shake the, to let them know that I'm not playing with you. Sometimes you have to do that. But you've got to be very, very careful because you also don't have the police on your side.
That's
Oh,
true.
well, you saw what that Black father did when the police officer killed his son.
Yeah, I know. And you're going to have more of that because, you know, James Chaney of the Goodman, Schwerner, and Chaney trio, his brother went on a rampage as well. People don't talk about that. What they also don't talk about is during slavery, how many slave masters were killed by the people they had enslaved. People would grind glass and put it in the food. Oh, no, no, no. People fought back in a lot of ways. You can't, see, we have to be very, very clear. You can't hurt people and degrade people without paying a price. But the fact is, then everybody's sick.
And you're right. When you just hit the right, everybody is sick and everybody pays, regardless of whatever side you're on. Everybody pays for the mistakes that are made in America. And people need to understand that. We have people who are neighbors. You said it earlier. We need to understand this is 2025, and our neighbors who have not changed. This probably has been infesting in her since she was a teenager. This young lady who called this man little boy out of his name. This is not anything new to her. It's a dinner table conversation, probably. This is how she was brought up. And so I'm saying to people that this is a nationwide conversation that needs to be addressed on both sides. Black people, white people, Asians, Hispanics, everyone has to deal with this. We all know if you are a Black woman or Black boy in the world, at 5 years old, my mother said, you are dark skinned. Hello. You have a wide nose, big lips, and you're getting ready to go to a school where there's only 7 Blacks in the school. This is what you need to do at 5 or 6 years old. 5 or 6. I can hear her voice today. And most of us as African American men and women can hear that voice. The Jewish community, they had things and conversations that were said and shared with their children. You can hear the voices of our grandmothers and our grandfathers telling us how we were going to have to take this journey through life if we were not part of the system or part of the White House group or part of this woman's culture, that we would have to do things in a different way. We have to march in a different way. But that does not mean, I want to say this, I'm where you are, Jackson. That does not mean that we back up, back off. We need to show up and show out. This is where the community can come in. This little Black boy was called out of his name. We need to check her right away. Check
That's
her
right.
right away.
But let me, I don't want to talk about the Jewish community. I want to speak to a member of that community. Well, because I think we have a lot to learn from each other. Everybody does.
Yes, yes.
You know, and I grew up with a lot of Jewish kids, and they lived in my neighborhood.
Yes.
And I knew they were going to Hebrew school. And I know their sense of themselves came from within their community. And I remember in my Harvard interview, which looking back, it was such a pivotal moment in my life. I was accused of being ethnocentric. And I was, because he would say, you speak so well. And it's clear you were raised around white people. I said, no, I was not. Well, of course, I was raised around white people, but they didn't teach me to speak. They didn't teach me to read. So all of these qualities that you find admirable, I did not get from white people. That was insulting, but he accused me of being ethnocentric. I was raised in the heart of the Black community, where the expectations that I would excel were off the charts. Of course you're going to excel. Of course you are. Of course you're going to be excellent. Of course you're going to be the best. And that is how traditionally Black people have been raised, particularly if you've been raised within your community, because you know, as a Jewish person, you know what your parents told you what you got to deal with out here. That's so right. We're going to forewarn you, and we're going to arm you. Am I correct? Help me to understand the whole concept of how you've been taught to deal with this onslaught of, and the feelings, that the hostilities that people have against Jewish people. What were you taught?
Well, it's that same sense of vigilance, right? And differently than Black people, a degree of, we have the ability to pass, to hide.
Yeah.
But it was that sense of vigilance, and it was, as well, like a sense of dignity that comes from that as well. Like, we will take that higher road, and yes, that woman deserves to be slapped, but I don't deserve to be the one doing the slapping.
Okay.
And that's how I think of that way. Like, sometimes, sometimes we talk about, like, when we go out and protest, we're not necessarily protesting because we think in that individual protest that we can accomplish a change, but because we don't want the world that we live in, this broken system, to change us. And so I would say that same type of idea, right? Like, we don't want to change from this. We don't want to become hateful from this, or to give up from this, that people are capable of change, and that we are capable of building a better world. And, I just came from Washington, D.C. with repairs of the breach, and looking at this abomination of a budget from the Republicans, and feeling again like we're back in the Reagan era. And the dangers to our society are the people on Medicaid, and the people in Section 8 housing, and the people receiving SNAP benefits, rather than the oligarchs that are, living this opulent life. And we were there to pray against that budget, which wound us up in jail. But it's that idea that we will take that moral high ground, and we will model and vision a society where this doesn't take place, where this isn't taught to people's children, and where our government isn't modeling this through through the blaming of the poor. Because I remember back under the Reagan administration, and then under the Clinton administration,
that's true,
people that use our social safety net were smeared as, that Black welfare queen, right? That was the image, which isn't even accurate to begin with. The majority of folks on welfare are actually white women, but that's not the point, right?
No, it is, because when he signed that welfare bill, he had Black people, Clinton, who I personally love, but he had Black people standing behind him. And you remember when he was running for president the first time, he went and executed a man who had the intelligence of someone in kindergarten, because he was making a point, a racial point, right? I mean,
and we refuse to sink to that level, right? Yeah. To hate in return, and we must, we must show love in return. And in the hopes that this woman's children can be reached through other avenues, through schools and through, through exposure to other people in this world, that they may, I remember I had this, I met this person, God, in my late teens or something, and he had tie-dyed his father's Ku Klux Klan hat.
No.
But that these children that were raised in it may be able to see through it, and that they may, do the equivalent, right? That they may come out differently. And, I hate to always bring up Palestine, but this is what we battle with in the Jewish community. And it is our young generation, it is our youth that are teaching our elders to unlearn the racism, the dehumanization of the Palestinian people. And, that's where this change will really take place. That's how we can unlearn this racism from so many.
But Ariel, don't hate to bring it back to Palestine. Our tax dollars are going to that.
Yeah,
and
that's what we battle with in our families as white Jews, it's the youth that are coming out and saying, like, no, and in a loving way, like gently bringing the older generation along to say, like, no, Palestinians are just as human as we are. And so we need white folk, and especially young white folks, to do that, and to be the ones to call this out and say, no, not in my name. Not in my name. I won't be part of this.
No, and while we're doing this in a loving way, we need to be very, very clear on our message that we will not tolerate this. That the communities, young, old, whomever, need to say, yes, I love you dearly. But we're not going to tolerate you calling our children, our women, or whomever out of their names. We're not going to tolerate. And I am going to be mad about that. I might love you as a community.
Jesus turned over the tables in the
temple. But I'm not going to tolerate and accept.
I think having a temper, that's not a bad thing. Oh, no. I mean, I have every right to be angry with you and to read you the riot act in impolite language. Now, hold on. But
yes,
we are a gun culture. We're a violent culture. Forget it. Because lynching is a rope. Ropes and dogs. Okay. So but let me find it before I go to you, Dr. Latrice, a community psychologist, because this is traumatizing. I just wanted to get through a couple of these comments. Miss Robinson, Cuckoo, hey, hand up there in South Carolina. You said, that's right, Chappelle. I would be in jail. Oh, special needs kids are off limits. I would have lost it. And I hear you. Solomon said, learn how to deal with these folks outside of the media many days or weeks later. And Tanya said, she responded, God is still working on me. This one crossed the line. She came from a family of racism. And Solomon said, the Jewish community told Reverend Jackson back in the 80s, we don't forgive and we don't forget. That's true. And he said, and that stuck with me. And well, they did. But not all of them did. But, as someone who comes from the Christian tradition, Jesus said, turn the other cheek. And that is what I do. And everybody does not, every Jewish person didn't have that tact with Reverend. You know that because you were part of the campaign, Livonia. You know Carolyn Casson. You know Bob Borsage. You know Mark Weiner. We can just name them. And they were sitting next to Mark Weiner. And Albert McIver and James Ogby. We had everybody. And sometimes it was the first time that everybody had worked in that kind of environment with everybody. And I know it can be done. And I promise you that is where we're going to have to go if we are going to survive. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You can't eat anything because you will have no teeth. You won't be able to see anything. And eventually you will die.
And guess what? Not only one community, we're talking about both communities or the communities or
All of
your
them.
community. Everybody's impacted by just what that young lady did with that little black boy.
Yeah.
Not only was the African American community impacted by that, but her community also. So we now they have to respond in a way. They are being exposed also, just so everybody will know. And everybody has to react in a way. So now we know what the playing field, as your reverend, as your father would say, is the playing field even? Is the playing field even? The answer to the question, no.
Well, hold on,
No.
because we just found out, thank you, Solomon, that the police officers, most of them were black, who killed Tyree Nichols in Memphis, they were just found not guilty.
Isn't
We'll
it
talk
something?
about that tomorrow, I promise you. But
Mm-mm.
because it's a culture, everybody. It's,
Yes.
it's not just skin, it's kin. Dr. LaShawn Latrice, I mean, because of course, you make noise for change. She is a community psychologist, but she's also an activist. Everybody here is an activist. I'm so glad to see that you're out of jail, Ariel Gold, my sister. She's always going to jail, but you did come out of Code Pink, and that's how y'all get down. I ain't mad at you, my sister. That's him.
I'll tell you a funny story from it. We were
Oh,
praying in the
please.
Capitol Rotunda against this horrible budget that attacks the wombs of women and children and so on. And the police came over and they said, "Who's in charge here?" And one of us said, "The God of justice." Somebody else said, "God." And we said, "God's in charge." They got wicked mad about that and told us to stop. And so we knelt and continued.
Bless her heart. See, that's why I always have to check. I almost have trepidation. I get shakes when I text you because I'm like, this girl might be in jail. I don't know because that's
And
what
she was.
she was trained that way, but
Mm-hmm.
she was doctor. But for just cause, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, how did you react to this story? I mean, you're a mom, you're a grandmom, you're a psychologist.
Um, when I first heard this story, I had to. My daughter brought it to me. I had to ask her to send it to me because she was telling me about it, and she was so upset. And I had not heard about it, so I guess she heard it on TikTok and her little networks that she's on, and I couldn't believe it. But she was more astonished at the fact of how the money was being raised for the lady.
Yeah.
And she was saying, Mom, at this time, I think it was up to 375. And I was saying, wait, $375,000 because she called a black kid a nigga.
Mm-hmm.
I was so
Mm-hmm.
shocked. I mean,
Oh,
just imagine, my daughter's 18 years old.
it's
So
500,000. I saw 590,000. I've seen north of 600,000. I've heard 700,000. They've raised
Just
well
looked at
more
it.
than
It's
300,000.
741,000 plus.
Thank you very much. Because I told you, I keep reading the reports, and they continue. Her fund continues to grow, and the last I saw, the NAACP of Rochester, Minnesota, had been able to raise $341,000 for this boy, for this child. So
but the GoFundMe for Rodney was snatched down. And they gave all that money back for the other gentleman. Um who snapped and went and did whatever he did to get justice for his son. It's all trauma, however you look at it. You can't tell a person how to react when he saw the video and he snapped and he felt like he had to go and get justice, but his GoFundMe was snatched down. But I said, wait a minute, didn't Kyle Rittenhouse have a huge GoFundMe? And
yes,
Yep.
everybody goes, yes, he did. But
Yes,
it's
he did.
amazing that there is a large group of people in the world who believe this type of behavior is acceptable. And not only is it traumatic for us as Black people, our children, our grandchildren, but it really shows the state of the world. It shows the culture that exists behind all of these things that we think we've graduated away from, but we really haven't. So I was just flabbergasted when I just saw the reaction. But it still reminded me that we live in a really strange society where certain things are applauded and then the other things are swept away and hidden,
and it has a color attached to it, and a lot of people don't want to admit that.
Well,
What's
you
so
know what,
bad is she's
everybody.
about to be a millionaire over her racist action.
But you know, but that the country was built on that. The country became a superpower on its anti-black racism and its anti. No. I mean, they've seen it pay. It's just not going to pay like it used to. Thank you, Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso in the Sahel. But he's part of a long tradition of people who've been fighting back. So let's be very, very clear. We have to fight back against this. At the same time, you have to pray for people who are this sick, because she's sick. Anyone
And
who
this is a reminder of what we are
Yes.
what we're dealing with. We need to understand that welcome to America. Many things have changed, but many things have not. And we have to remember not to be shocked, but how do we react to it?
Absolutely.
What do we do? What's the next step? And how do we share that story and conversation and lesson with our children and our community?
I will say this as I close out, because ladies, we're going to do this again. Paula, shout out to you. She was so happy. Hey, Miss Wanda, she was so happy. Correctional officer for the lockdown. She was happy to see an all-woman panel talking about this. Oh my heavens! What we have to do is be vigilant. Know that the struggle never ever is over. It continues, and victory is certain if you continue with the struggle. Because this anti-black racism is everywhere, everywhere. But we also, people find reasons to fight. If you don't believe it, go to Ireland. Look at the Catholics and the Protestants. They look alike, but they have profound disagreements, and they have died and been killed over those disagreements. I'm not diminishing anti-black racism. I'm not diminishing it at all, but I'm saying we've got some sickness, some rot in our human family, and this is an expression of it. And we need to deal with it. We need to deal with it. We need to continue to look at this, and that's right. What did you say? I remember Nathan and Julia and Julia Hare. Boy, oh boy, they were something special. That's right. And so we're going to continue to have this conversation, not today, but another day, because it's so amazing. This is like birth of a nation. If as long as she cried victim, help me to save my family, after she's attacked a child, a 5-year-old child, she might not have known he was on the spectrum, depending upon where he was on the spectrum, right? But when she found out, she's unrepentant. She doesn't even care. So there's something, she's spiritually sick. And don't ever let go of that. She's not someone, don't filth yourself up spiritually, hating her. You be well and pray for her. But you also don't play with her, and don't let her play with you. You need to arm your children, get them involved in the struggle, help them to understand. If you don't play with your children and let them be shocked, if they're shocked, they've already lost. Oh yeah, Samora Michelle said, if he's a great freedom fighter, great leader of Africa. He said, if the Western world speaks well of me, I have already betrayed you. If your child is shocked by the N-word, if your child is shocked by this maltreatment, this mistreatment, they've already lost, because you have not armed them. Shame on you. Ariel was armed. These Jewish children have been armed. A lot of children have been armed. And if we are going to survive, we must be armed too. Now, not with guns, but with love, with spiritual force, and the strength to take it. As my grandmama Helen said, if you can't take it, you can't make it. So if someone plays with you, if they call you the N-word, or more than that, if they treat you like one, don't you blink, and don't you play. Don't you back down. Don't you back down. Don't back down. Much love to the family of Tyree Nichols. I know they're hurting today, because those police officers who killed their beloved have been exonerated once again. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But right now, we're going to talk about the executive order from the President of the United States that is going to allow police officers to be unleashed. They already are unleashed. They're never convicted for the things that they do when they are out of order. There are a lot of good police officers out here, but there are some who are out of order. And there's a system that promotes that. So we got to talk about that with Fred Hampton's lawyer. So, ladies, text me if you want to be a part of that conversation. I'm going to run on over here because I've got someone waiting. Attorney G. Flint Taylor, Fred Hampton's lawyer. He is all over this story, and we've got to talk about it. Let me know if you all want to join us, but I'm heading over there right now. AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the Santita Jackson Show.